Mine ain't the scariest, the clearest, the most painful, or the most beautiful. It just happens to be the one that's got its fingers around my throat. This is what Junot Diaz writes about stories. Most of us have an idea that our individual experience doesn't matter, that our voice is too little in a full world of bullhorns. We tell ourselves that in the bigger scheme of things, we are truly a dot lost in the static. But if we don't tell our stories, its fingers will only get tighter around our throat until we finally speak up. So call this an ode to the stories we have yet to tell. The stories that are still tiny seeds in the soft earth that came from our softer hearts. These stories that we are too afraid to share with the world, so we keep their birdsong locked in a cage and we let a volcano swallow the key years ago. Those stories that keep you awake at 2 a.m. and you want to text her and tell her about it, but you two haven't spoken in years. This is an ode to the stories we forget. The stories buried in our mother's laughter and tucked behind our father's ear. This is the story of the dust and the ash and the swirling ball of nothing that came before us. These stories that look more like eraser shavings and broken graphite that we just blow off our desk with careless breath. Those stories that we hid in our piggy bank and put that pig in a safe and moved that safe to the secret base and you forgot the combination and the way to get there. This is an ode to the stories that we share. Our stories with arms long enough to hug the entire world. Our stories that smile like a goddamn firecracker that could never burn you. Our stories that are more golden and still so casual that every last sentence becomes the most commonplace miracle. We are those commonplace miracles. I've learned that we have to embrace ourselves. The biggest thing we can do is show our stories respect. And to respect each story means to never throw away your draft. We can come back and edit them. We can come back and place a footnote and an addendum and talk about how angry we were when we were 18 and this story isn't a reflection of us today, but it was still a mirror of yesterday. The fact that it was our truth makes it more important to keep. Each story we tell is a planet that exists, and who are we to be a destroyer of worlds? Keep the stories that make you smile. Reread the stories that make you sad. When we forget to tell our stories, it is standing as indifference in the face of hatred. When we invalidate each other's stories, it is erasure. When we shut our voice box and never let our stories out, we are depriving the world of our truth. Yeah, every topic has been written about, but it hasn't been written about by your hands. So what are you waiting for? I'm going to tell you one more story of a confused and younger me. A me that was filled with fire and vinegar and angst, even though I'm not this person anymore, and the issues in this next poem have been resolved with my parents. It's still important for me to speak this truth. We must respect our former selves as well as our future selves and remember that change is possible. Growth can happen, and we can take our hands and make ourselves a future. Times I've been mistaken for a girl. 1. Ever since I was tall enough to reach the phone perched and mounted against my wall, I was old enough to answer it. Every time I did answer it, I was always greeted by someone on the other end calling me ma'am. And for the longest time, I thought they were saying man because I was cool and hip, man. It was the 90s. 2. When entering high school, I found a correlation between girls finding I was cute and long swishy hair, so I grew my hair out like how optimists never cut their dreams down or how dreamers never trim their hopes short. But this lion's mane became and remained a gender mystery to some store owners asking my girlfriend and I, so, how are you ladies doing tonight? 3. I was always a crier, and with 3 older brothers manlier and tougher than I, it wouldn't be strange to hear shut up or buck up, uncomfortably familiar like loneliness. Hearing stop being a girl was a terrible mantra that I just got used to, like, I will never amount to anything, or I'm gonna die alone. 4. Though very far from the truth, my mom, in her traditional ways, believes gay to be synonymous with effeminate. So wouldn't it be odd for her to question my sexuality due to the clothing I wore, or how much time I spent on appearances? Why don't you go do boy things? How are you gonna take care of your wife? 5, my father found out that sometimes I like looking at boys. He told my mother that he lost a son. And I can't help but think about my sister, who's 6. My mother always complained about having 4 boys and no daughters. 7, my sister was born in 1991, but 8, died 3 days after her birth due to complications. 9, my mother didn't want to have any children after that, but 10, my father said he had a feeling, I don't know what that feeling was, but I think it was 11, that he wanted to have another daughter. 12, I didn't come out the way they expected. 13, I think I was a failure before I was even conceived. 3, I was always a crier. 14, I was always so mad at myself for being so sensitive. 15, why wasn't it okay to play house with the girls? 16, I was never good at cops and robbers. 17, they called roll and said Alexandria. 0, I was a disappointment before it even began. 12, I didn't come out the way they expected. 12, I didn't come out the way they expected. 12, I didn't come out the way they expected. And now, I'm at some variable of a number, wondering if it still makes a difference. My hair is shorter, my voice is a little deeper, and I don't do things a boy does. I don't do things a girl does. Mom, dad, world, don't you understand that I do things that I do?